Call it.
Call it.
Yes.
For what?
Just call it.
Oh, call it we shall. Disclaimer. Watching this will turn your favorite masterpiece into a disaster. If you're not ready to spend the next 3 hours staring at a wall questioning your taste, leave now. I'm not here to validate you, I'm here to ruin the vibe. Remember, everyone the critic. I'm just the one with the microphone. I was laying on the sofa this weekend, doom scrolling through my phone when the gas station scene popped up on screen. I actually sat up. I was hyped. I wanted to relive that feeling. The suffocating tension, the cold sweats, the way my heart hammered against my ribs while Anton Chigurh chewed those cashews like he was grading my soul on a curve. But as the scene played out, it was like catching your favorite magician dropping the deck of cards. The tension was there, but it felt hollow. I kept waiting for that masterpiece high to hit, but instead, I just felt empty. It's a weird feeling when a legendary scene suddenly feels dead. It's like going back to your childhood home and realizing it's actually just a tiny drafty box with bad plumbing. Once you notice the trapdoor under the rug, the magic trick doesn't look like genius anymore. It looks like a scam. That's when I realized this scene is a total work of BS. And no, I'm not talking about the coin toss. I'm talking about that horror movie car logic. You know the trope. The car has had impeccable service for 10 years, but it joins the killer's payroll and refuses to start the second you need to hit the gas. This entire scene is the cinematic equivalent of that dead car battery. It works because it deletes reality the exact second reality would get in the way of Anton Chigurh looking like a god. It's a beautifully crafted lie that depends on one thing: the audience being too distracted by the shiny coin to notice the writing is rigged. We are in the 1980s West Texas, a place so empty that a rush hour is just two trucks passing each other at a stop sign once every 3 days. The only thing more common than the dirt is the silence, and frankly, the dirt has a better personality. Behind the counter, we have our victim, an older white owner-operator. In the real 1980s, this guy isn't a helpless clerk at a corporate franchise. He's the king of this 50-square-foot empire. He's outlasted oil busts, droughts, and probably a dozen guys who thought they could trade a broken watch for a tank of leaded gas. He spent his life sniffing out BS, and he usually smells it before the car even turns off the highway. Then, the door creaks open. In walks Anton Chigurh. He's an outsider with a haircut that is suspiciously well manicured for a man driving through the desert. He's radiating a frequency that screams, "I don't have a social security number, but I do have a favorite shovel in my trunk." He looks less like a customer and more like a glitch in the matrix that has arrived to delete your browser history. Now, in a Hollywood thriller, this is where the music gets low and the helpless old man starts trembling. But in the real 1980s West Texas, stranger danger wasn't just a slogan on a lunchbox, it was a calorie-burning instinct. This is a place where hello is usually just a polite way of asking, "Why aren't you leaving yet?" An environment where property rights are treated like holy scripture and lingering is considered a hostile act. In a place like this, a stranger acting this weird doesn't get a 3-minute therapy session. He gets exactly 30 seconds to pay for his cashews before the close sign flips and the conversation turns into a tutorial on the Second Amendment, delivered at a high velocity. The movie wants you to feel the tension of a predator stalking a lamb, but if you actually know the math of this room, the predator is walking into a trap he doesn't even see. Let's talk about the hardware, or rather the lack of it. In a Hollywood vacuum, Anton Chigurh is the only one with a weapon. But the idea of an isolated shop owner not having a psychological backstop within arm's reach is the biggest fantasy in the whole movie. We aren't talking about a guy who's looking for a fight. We are talking about a guy who has a 12 gauge tucked under the counter next to the Marlboros. It's not there for conversational leverage. It's there because when the nearest sheriff is 40 miles away, you are the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Instead, the film deletes the gun from the equation entirely. It turns a man who should have a home court advantage into a guy who acts like he's never seen a hostile stranger before. Why? Because the second the cashier remembers he's a Texan with a shotgun, Anton Chigurh stops being a mythic force of faith and starts being a guy with a bad haircut who's about to get a very messy lesson in trespassing. The tension in this scene doesn't come from Anton's power. It comes from the fact the movie lobotomized the cashier's common sense. It forced him to forget he's holding all the cards, just so you would stay scared for him. It's not suspense. It's a staged kidnapping of the character's survival instincts.
What business is it of yours? Where I'm from? Friendo?
Things kick off with the Friendo heard around the world. It's the ultimate verbal red flag. A nickname so forced and unsettling, it makes a telemarketer sound like your best man. Anton drops the F-bomb not because he likes the guy, but because he's testing to see if the cashier's survival instincts have officially left the chat. Spoiler, they have. Anton gets his feelings hurt because the cashier committed the ultimate crime of noticing he's from Dallas. In a Hollywood vacuum, that line is chilling. In reality, in the real world, the customer is always right rule has a don't be a creep expiration date. A real proprietor doesn't lean in for more. He shuts it down. He creates distance. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't keep asking, will there be anything else? With the customer service smile of a suburban Wendy's trainee. He stares you down until the silence is so loud you can hear your own heartbeat. And then he points to the door. But that's not what happens. Instead of a dismissal, we get a surrender. This is where realism doesn't just leave the room, it jumps out a window. The cashier stays in this interaction way past the expiration date of human common sense. Anton isn't just being cryptic, he's being a jerk. He insults the man with a didn't mean nothing. He starts doing a deep dive into the guy's personal life, asking what time he goes to bed, and mocking the fact that he married into the business. Look at his face. The movie wants you to think he's paralyzed by Anton's mythic aura. But let's be petty for a second. At this point, any self-respecting Texas business owner isn't playing along with a stranger's weird improv set. He's not an audience member. Or, at least he shouldn't be. But the script needs him to be passive. If the cashier acts even with an ounce of territorial authority, if he says, pay for the nuts and get out, the movie is over in 20 minutes. Instead, he stays. He answers questions about his wife's father. He lets a man who just insulted his heritage talk him into a high-stakes coin toss. He's not behaving like a man protecting his property. He's behaving like a character who's read the script and knows he's not allowed to leave until the villain looks cool. It's not sociology. It's narrative convenience. The coins didn't give the cashier a spine because if they did, Anton Chigurh wouldn't be a legend. Just a social disaster who gets told to shut up and pay by a man who's seen much scarier things than a guy with a coin. Chigurh's aura doesn't come from his violence. It comes from the fact that he's the only person in the room allowed to have a personality. Then comes the centerpiece, the call it moment. Anton places a 25-cent piece on the counter like he's laying down a challenge to God himself. This is the part of the movie where everyone holds their breath. But if you're staying petty, this is the part where you start rolling your eyes. Think about the absurdity of this. A man walks into your store, insults your life, asks about your bedtime, and then demands you bet your life on a coin toss just because you asked about the rain in Dallas. It's the ultimate Yelp review. Service was fine, but the cashier asked about the rain, so I had to put him into a 50-50 existential crisis. 1 star. In a world with gravity and logic, the cashier doesn't call it. He says, put your money away and get out of my store before I use this countertop to perform an unplanned autopsy. He doesn't engage with the riddle because he's a grown man with a business to run, not a contestant on a supernatural game show. But the movie needs the ritual. It needs the cashier to validate Anton's insanity by taking part in it. When the cashier asks, what do I stand to win? He's already lost. He's accepted the premise that the stranger has the right to judge him. The movie traps the cashier in a logic loop, where he's too confused to realize he has the power to just end the conversation. The coin toss only works as a climax because the filmmakers successfully convinced you that the cashier has no other choice. They turned a simple transaction into a high-stakes ritual by stripping away every ounce of the shopkeeper's common sense, until the only thing left in his brain was heads or tails. The coin toss cements that realism hasn't just left the building, it's been buried in a shallow grave out back. The coin toss isn't human behavior, it's pure allegory. At this point, the Coen brothers have stopped writing a thriller and started writing a dark fairy tale. They have convinced you that Anton isn't just a criminal with a bad haircut, he's a force of nature. And nature doesn't care about your property rights, your local legitimacy, or the 12 gauge you're supposed to have under the counter. But let's call it what it is. The Coens cheated. They had to delete every realistic exit, nerf every survival instinct, and turn a seasoned 1980s Texan into a confused philosopher, just so Anton could have a stage to look cool on. They didn't win the argument. They just muted the other side. It's engrossing. It's legendary. It's one of the best scenes ever filmed. But it's a rigged game. The cashier didn't win that coin toss because he was lucky. He won because the script finally decided he'd been tortured enough for one day. He didn't survive because of fate. He survived because the cheat code was finally turned off. Once you see the seams, the magic doesn't just fade, it evaporates. You realize you weren't actually watching a masterclass in tension, you were watching a masterclass in narrative gaslighting. The Coens didn't build a bridge between two characters, they built a pedestal for a monster and cut the legs out from under everyone else, just to make him look taller. They didn't just write a scary villain, they rigged the social physics of 1980s Texas to make sure he couldn't lose. Don't get me wrong, it's still a masterpiece. It's a gorgeous, haunting, legendary piece of cinema. But let's be honest, it's also a beautifully crafted lie. It's the dead battery in the horror movie, polished until it looks like a diamond. Anton Chigurh didn't spare that man. The script did. And the moment you realize the force of nature is actually just a guy benefiting from a writer's bias, the masterpiece starts to look a lot more like a parlor trick. Enjoy the movie. Just don't let the shiny coin distract you from the man behind the curtain. There. Now you'll think of me every time you rewatch that. Got a scene you want permanently ruined? Drop it below in the comments. I can't ruin them all, but I'll make sure the ones I do catch are never the same again. And always, stay petty.